Take your seats. Before we start the session, we'll try and start on time. I hope everybody had the opportunity to look at the exhibition outside the Berlaymont. It's super interesting that they have the driverless shuttle and a driverless car that's obviously been used to collect lots of data. It looks like a hydrogen fuel cell in the boot, but in fact it's a whole series of servers to collect data. So the whole the exhibition is nice, and of course this evening there will be more. So please come on in and take your seats. So welcome to this session on synergies between funding instruments in transport infrastructure from research to deployment. And it's all about addressing what was said at this morning's session, that valley of death, and building on synergies. As Harold Reuter said this morning, it's an important topic. How do we mobilize private and public funding instruments and private, and industry and the public bodies to work a little bit more in a coordinated way? So that's what the session is all about today. My name's Alan Haig. I was the... which got a laugh from the back, which is great. But I think that's because of the realization that I'm not Jennifer Baker, who has an opportunity to have a little moment to breathe. So I'm not Jennifer, I'm Alan. And I am a policy advisor to the Deputy Director General in DG Research and Innovation, to Joanna Drake. But in fact, that's something that's happened in the last 2 or 3 years, because many of you will know the INEA and the SINEA agencies, because I was head of department at the INEA agency for 7 years, implementing much of Horizon 2020 in energy and transport. So if you have a grant agreement that was signed in the last 7 years from the Horizon 2020 Transport Work Programme, it's 50-50 that I signed it. So if there are any queries about payments and late payments and that sort of thing, then I'll be happy to hand you to my colleagues at SINEA, because I'm no longer there. I'm DG Research and Innovation now. So as I say, this session is focusing on that role of synergies between programs and stakeholders so that we can support the common goal of connected and automated driving. In fact, this session builds on a session that the European Commission initiated on a web streaming, something like October 2022, which was to showcase a number of funding programs to the CCAM and the 2.0 constituency. And so that was quite well received in terms of understanding the different programs that might be able to work together. And in fact, it carried on at the TRA conference in Lisbon. And on the back of that, we thought that we should be holding a session like this. And it's fantastic that we have the panel that we have today, because we have policy makers, we have the implementer of one of the major programs, we have representation of roads and road infrastructure, and also of vehicles. And so I think we're going to get a good perspective from many different angles here. So there have been some good successes, I would say, and still some problems in the deployment of collaborative and automated transport or connected and automated driving. We saw the great projects, like the data collecting projects like the L3 pilot. We saw the big platooning activities that happened a few years ago. We've seen lots of data collected and the establishment of data platforms. So the building blocks are there, but we're still finding a problem of that large, big-scale demonstrator, moving from the research activity, the innovation, the pilot, the small demo, to the big demonstrator. And I think that's where synergies can come in between programs and stakeholders. There are lots of funding sources in the public domain at the moment. If you take the recovery package, European Regional Development Funding, and of course CEF, Horizon 2020. So there are opportunities, but of course that has to break into also the private funding. We heard quite a lot about the market and the place of the market in this morning's session. So that investment that has had those successes will continue to be needed, and that's what we want to explore in this session now. So many say what we need is a mature discussion about synergies between programs and a mature discussion about how public and private can work together a bit better. So I think at that moment I will stop introducing and introduce you to the panel that we will hear from later. So first of all, Philippe Chantraine, who is the head of unit of the Transport and Investment Unit in DG Move, and that's a unit that develops policy, and in particular policy related to transport infrastructure and development with regard to the CEF programme. And you know the CEF programme also supports CITS that was discussed quite a lot this morning. And then Christian Faure, who I had the privilege of being a colleague with when I was at the INEA agency, and Christian is a head of unit in the SINEA agency, who is actually implementing part of the CEF programme, so implementing CEF transport, and that's also supporting cross-border that was discussed this morning, and CITS as well. Then Susanne Schultz, who is part of the CCAM team at Autobahn, responsible for development and deployment and operation of CITS on German motorways, and I think also has responsibilities on the German Autonomous Driving Act, which is legislation was mentioned a number of times to try and get the same cross-border understanding and standardization, so an important element to tease out in the conversation in a moment. And then Niklas Gustafsson, who is Public Policy and Regulatory Affairs head at the Volvo Group, and is advisor to the CEO of the Volvo Group. And as we know, Volvo are a member of the CCAM partnership. So also responsible for the large collaborative projects. So a great voice to have on the panel. So I think at that point I stop the introductions, I sit, and I would ask the panel members to come down the row in order to give us your view on synergies between funding programs, synergies between instruments, synergies between public and private sector from research to deployment. So if you could kick us off, Philippe.
Yes, hello, good. Yes, hello, good afternoon. And very pleased to be here to discuss with you today. I will start maybe by presenting the Connecting Europe facility, because maybe that's the aspect that you here in the room are less familiar with, and you will see that the synergies flow naturally from the objectives we have with the Connecting Europe facility as our funding instrument for the MFF period 21 to 27. The Connecting Europe facility is the facility there to deploy the trans-European networks. It's about three sectors: the digital, the energy, and the transport sector. I will only focus on the transport sector today, where we have 25.8 billion euros for the period 21 to 27. To do what? To implement the TEN-T policy, the Trans-European Transport Networks. The Trans-European Transport Networks is the policy aiming to build a European network out of the different national networks, which are not sufficiently connected, first of all, because we have many cross-border links which are missing, which are not well connected as well, because there are lots of problems of interoperability, so that systems on different member states work differently, and hence cross-border flows are hampered, and which does not work well because the intermodality, the shift between different transport modes from the maritime to the railway, from the railway to the road, etc., does also not work properly. So the Trans-European Transport Network policy aims to build this real network, which is the backbone for the internal market. And we do so by building, first of all, these missing links with some major projects you might be familiar with, like the Brenner Base Tunnel and others, but also by making sure that the infrastructure available is used in the best possible way. Because we all know that building infrastructure is often more costly and more difficult than to make better use of available capacities. And this, of course, entails digitalization and traffic management systems, etc. So you see where I'm coming. This is where the two sides meet in our policies. The TEN-T policy foresees in particular that the network has to be developed so that it is up to date with the current state of development of technologies. So it's a very ambitious policy. We want to implement new technologies indeed. We want to make sure, however, as well, that these technologies are ready for use and that they have an immediate impact, because while we are building this network for the future, we want to have an immediate impact of what we are doing. So with the CEF program, we support the implementation of the TEN-T policy. That means that in our work program, which we have similar to the Horizon program, we also dedicate funds to the digitalization, let's say, or to the traffic management system. We call it intelligent mobility, where the ITS and CITS in particular are topics which are open for applications. We are implementing our program in a very predictable way this time round. We have adopted one work program in the beginning of the period, which covers the first 3 years. So 3 calls which are scheduled in 21, 22 and 23. The first 2, of course, have been closed by now. We are right now in the middle of the evaluation of the second call. This is why I was a minute late, maybe, because things are extremely complicated given the very high oversubscription we are facing, and notably also in the part which concerns the intelligent mobility, because here we have, unfortunately, many more very good proposals than we have budget available. So where do we concentrate our budget on when it comes to taking these tough decisions? What we are looking always for are the European added value of the projects. We really want to make sure that when we put money, it is in projects where there's either coordination between member states or entities from different member states, where there's a project, so to say, that would not happen without our intervention from the European side. We do not want to substitute national funds or any other funds. When there are projects which are of local, regional, national interest, our feeling is that there will be funding at those levels. We come in for those parts where there is no other fund available, and here really our focus on the European added value. With that, we will be able to select only 1 out of 3 or 4 projects. So this will really be on the most mature and the highest scoring project. But this we will announce in June for the second call. But I invite nonetheless everybody to look already out for the next call, which will be launched in September and which closes in January. And with a bit of luck, you will be one of the projects that Christian will then sign with a grant agreement. Voilà, that's for an introduction. And I'm very much looking forward to any question and any discussion we might have. Thank you.
Point of not wanting to duplicate what national funding would have been doing anyway, and I think finding that boundary, it's easy to say synergies should just come together naturally, but doing that in part of the jigsaw where other elements are being funded, I think that raises a challenge. So thank you very much for that. Christian, would you like to give your opening remarks on how we support from research to deployment?
Yes, of course. So first of all, many thanks to Philippe to have said everything that I wanted to say. So now it will be a bit more difficult for me. Maybe just to add a bit on the role of SINEA in all this. So DG Move here is defining the policy objectives. And then what we are trying to do from SINEA is to publish call for proposals which are in line, obviously, with this priority, and then select the best proposals. So we are working, the overall idea is to promote a competitive environment whereby we will select the best proposals that will be best aligned with the policies, priorities defined by DG Move. So a key example of the kind of project that comes out of this competitive process is the C-Road platform, which involved, I think, 18 countries and more than 50 cities. And this is a kind of project that Philippe was mentioning, where there is clearly an EU added dimension and the need of coordination. So, and so this is an example of CITS project, and we consider that the implementation of this CITS project is essential because it's already a first step towards preparing the infrastructure for a larger rollout of this ERM project. So Philippe spoke about infrastructure, and indeed the CEF is a fund for infrastructure, being it new or being it optimizing the use of the infrastructure. What we see clearly in all this traffic management system is that if you want the system to work, you need the infrastructure to be equipped, but you need also the mobile equipment to be equipped, being it cars, trucks, trains, planes. And there is a need to have a reflection on where you put, if I may say so, the clever part of the system. Do you need it on the ground? Do you put it in the mobile part? A bit of both is usually needed, and it's very important to coordinate all this to reach interoperability and to achieve this in the most efficient manner. So obviously this is a complex decision, and all has to be done within the framework of standardization process. We have a number of CEF projects that are a bit at the limit between research and large-scale deployment. These are pilots, and they are building clearly on Horizon 2020 project, and we see it also with Horizon Europe. So we see these synergies happening in the sense of continuity, whereby the research phase is done on the Horizon, and then the roll-up or a more, I would say, large-scale pilot deployment is done on the CEF. And this is a bit where we say we see the synergies. So maybe that will be it for the introduction.
Thank you very much, Christian. And I move straight over to Suzanne. Your introductory comments. It should start as usual.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. I'm talking today as my in my role as a road operator and doing development and, in the end, also operation of very new systems. At the moment, we can say that we have many years of experience within the development of CITS. For example, you know, the CITS corridor project was a very successful one for us, and it was funded by a platform, the EU EIP platform, in the beginning. For the operational part, in the end, we used the tool of the corridor projects to get funded for the operational issues. And for the further development now, today, we are using another platform, which is the C-Roads platform, which was already called today. And the very first service we have now in operation, we developed, was the Roadworks Warning Service. And this will be available by the end of this year, hopefully, in all maintenance centers in Germany. And we will also contract our private companies now to do CITS on our motorways. For the further development, as I said, C-Roads is a very important tool to bring more CITS services on the road. And what we also learned during the last years, and which was also a topic today, the exchange with the automotive industry is a very important one. It's getting more and more important because the traffic system of the future will only be able to work when road and infrastructure work together with the cars as one unit and not as two single units. And the knowledge exchange should be a big part of newly funded projects, and also for all different stakeholders, I think. We, as a road operator, we do this all for safety and for efficiency. So this is always what we have in our back mind, let's put it that way. And we want to be quick. We want to have much more safety on the road. And that is why we use technology today, which is already available. So we also have a look in the future, and never mind what technology in the future will be the one which is doing the traffic system of the future. We have one working today, which is CITS via ETSI G5. We also bring our data to the national access points, and we are already learning today a lot about this technology, because we also need, when we regard operation, we need to set up processes within our company. Also on the OEM side, I think there needs to be done a lot. It's a brand new topic for everyone. And even if there are new technologies coming up, we don't start from zero, because we are learning today.
Thank you very much. And it seems to me that the last two speakers both mentioned that idea of data collection, and then where do you keep the intelligence? Do you keep it in the vehicle? Do you keep it in the cloud? Do you keep it in the infrastructure? And the rate of data exchange and communication. So they're all super interesting elements. But maybe, Nicholas, I could come back to you to hear it from the perspective of the vehicle.
Sure, thank you. So I'm Nicholas Gustafsson from Volvo Group then. And Volvo Group, and I will try to represent a little bit also the industry as truck OEMs, even though we are in fierce competition, of course, all of us. I will stick to the Volvo messages when I should, but I will try also to talk about the industry as such, a truck industry. Okay, so Volvo Group of today is trucks and buses and construction equipment and marine application. We divested Volvo Cars some 25 years ago. So, sometimes I need to clarify that a bit, since we share the same brand name. But why I do it today is actually because it is of importance a little bit, because what we are talking about in Volvo Group and in the rest of the truck industry, truck OEM industry, is then business to business. And why is that important in today's context? It is because it's completely different drivers of change if we are talking consumer products or if we are talking business to business. So just to calibrate ourselves a little bit, it's a different market pull when it comes to business to business. For us in truck industry, and I know we've been talking about this all morning, but it's all about efficiency. It's about the flow in the logistics system. It's about productivity, about keeping society running in a good way, actually. Securing that we have GDP growth. That's what we're talking about when we're talking goods transport, right? Keeping in mind the COVID situation, not at least, when we didn't have truck transport all of a sudden across borders, as you might recall. So it's all about keeping a flow, about competitiveness for large parts of society. We work horizontally in different partnerships. We work vertically in different partnerships throughout the value chain in many different parts of industry. European truck OEMs, we are a global industry. It's also important to keep in mind, maybe. And we are actually world leading, not only talking about Volvo Group, but also about our competitors out there. European truck OEMs are actually world leading in many areas, including today's topic. And EU collaboration, it is about research, innovation, and deployment. We need to reach a state of really deploying these technologies. In partnerships, of course, because this is the only way that we know that we win already today, and it will be the only way to win also tomorrow. At Volvo, we are committed to 100% safe. That's important to say. And also 100% fossil-free and 100% more productive transport system. So that's sort of our Northern Star internally in Volvo. And on the productivity side, for just as sort of a proof point, we have one separate business area called Volvo Automation System, just to secure that we build the business around automation and self-driving vehicles and machines. We are in the midst of a transition, and it's quite dramatic time. I've been more than 25 years in this company, and I never seen such an interesting time than what we have today, because we are in the midst of this transition. And it's a combined transition. It is a green transition, yes, but it's a green and digital transition. It's extremely important because connectivity is essential for safety, for logistic efficiency, for productivity, and also for going fossil-free. And building a little bit on fossil-free, one other Northern Star that we have in our company, besides all the regulations in Europe and the rest of the world, The real Northern Star for us is science-based target. I'm starting there because it's really, really important. It's our way of following our own trajectory towards fulfilling the Paris Agreement requirements. You all know that. But what is interesting with science-based target is also that, coming back to business, it also that it's thousands of companies signing up to this. And what is a little bit unique with businesses is that all business people want to really show results. They want to show that my CO2 footprint is actually being reduced. And this goes for our customers and for our customers' customers. And this is a momentum right now that we witness really close right now. This is happening as we speak. And that is driving change for real, because people want to report progress on what they do. Collaborative research and innovation projects are instrumental in this transition. Of course, for us internally, product and service technology development, obviously, but also for the bigger system solutions throughout the value chains, throughout industry verticals, be it ports, be it mining, cities, what have you. And we need to have a more broad approach now going forward, including also infrastructure, but also policies and regulations. Let us come back to that, hopefully, Alain, if possible. But it needs to be based from a user's need. That is maybe my main point in my introduction. It needs to be based on user needs. The benefits are huge, and we learn all the time from all the collaboration we do, and that goes for automated and self-driving vehicles, but also for electromobility and connectivity as such. We are participating in a huge amount of projects, adaptive, FAME, MODI, ensemble, and everything. But the combined effects and synergies is really important, and we've been learning a lot about that today, but also earlier on. And internally in Volvo, we see that, of course, the combined effects with our own research and innovation strategies and projects that we do globally in this global company. We are present in 190 countries all over the world. So there is synergies there to build on. But also national research projects, we talked about that a little bit earlier here on the panel. Volvo, Sweden, we are headquartered in Sweden, one of the smaller member states in Europe, right? Less than 3% of our sales in Volvo Group comes from Sweden. So it's not a huge market as such. But more than 50% of our research and innovation is happening in Sweden. So European context, let's secure that we keep the smaller member states in mind also. CFS was one good example when we did this together on European base. Ending then Alain with challenges from an EU perspective. We have a well-functioning system, we think, but everything can always be better, right? And that's what we're here to discuss today. And competition is fierce. We can, we all know that, but we can also witness that from a global company like Volvo Group. Competition in this area is fierce, from US, of course, but also from Asia. And it's growing very, very much. We see that we have a lot to do on the fragmented EU network. We need more harmonized regulations to get this going in Europe. And also on the digital infrastructure, we feel that we are afraid that we are lagging a little bit behind in Europe in parts of the digital infrastructure. And the basics in our transition, because remember I said green and digital, basic is the charging infrastructure for trucks out there. We are talking 6 years to 2030, right? And we rarely see any charging infrastructure for trucks out there. And we are reducing, maybe more than every third truck that we sell in 2030 needs to be electric. So system solutions, that's maybe my conclusion. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you all for those comments, because all very rich comments. And in fact, it would be easy to throw it to the floor now, because I've already got a few questions that of my own. But that idea that we're sitting on a transition, I think somebody called it a revolution. It really is true for the way vehicles will be in 20 years' time. And that transition is just starting. add into that the whole hydrogen economy that's going to be started, add into that or the changes in other parts of the energy system, and we really are sitting at the beginning of something that is going to be tremendous change. But I'm not going to throw the floor open at this moment. I'm going to stick to the original plan and just pose one or two point-blank questions. And you don't need to elaborate too long on the questions, because I think that we are not going to struggle for time. It's only a 1-hour session. But Philippe, could I come to you with the question, which is that several people have mentioned now this importance of going from Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe results to increase the impact of EU funding, and they're often highlighted, sometimes they call it downstream synergies, where we're looking at project level. So what are the value of these downstream synergies from your perspective, and would it make sense to have a more coordinated long-term funding agenda where the stepping stones between those programs are much easier, so between research and development and then more efficient deployment of all of these technologies?
Yes, I think indeed synergies are of course crucial, and it would be really stupid not to take advantage of that. I think lots of this is happening already quite naturally. As was said, there are projects flowing from Horizon, coming to deployment, coming to the Connecting Europe facility, and we are very proud actually of what we achieve in ITS and CITS, because this is a very good example. What we are not at all good at is selling our success stories, and that's a very different topic, and I think that is something we have to work much better about. I think the opportunities are certainly there. Again, it could be clarified, and I think for the future, of course, we can have let's say better links and better bridges between the programs to make sure that when we evaluate our projects, this history of the development is taken into account, and that we maximize the benefits of what we have invested in terms of research. But again, I think a lot of it is happening naturally, and we are very much eager to do so because of the challenges which were mentioned. Just to flag that when it comes, of course, also to alternative fuels, the Connecting Europe facility is very active in that area with the alternative fuel infrastructure facility. Now that we are getting to the standards for trucks on electric charging, we will come soon with a call which will target that. So things are moving quite fast also on our side, and Christian is involved in that quite directly as well. So here, this transformation of the road sector is indeed very, very interesting. Naturally, we are from the Connecting Europe facility, we are not funding a lot of road infrastructure per se, but everything around electrification, digitalization, etc. These are really priorities where we are focusing on and will continue to do so.
To be positive about the CEF programme, a very real synergy that happened not too long ago was where in the Horizon Europe Cities mission, if a beneficiary from the Horizon Europe Cities mission makes an application to CEF Transport, then it was put in the legal basis of the previous call that can be valorised during the evaluation process, and your evaluators are specifically looking for that, which is, it might not be as much as, an extra point or something very visible, but it at least is there as an indication that CEF is open for taking Horizon 2020 and Horizon Europe project results and then deploying them. So, I mean, that's very, very positive. Let me stay on that theme for a moment, Christian. I mean, you're involved in the deployment of the CEF programme. I mean, how can public and private investment best work together to help accelerate the sort of permanent deployment and rollout? How would you see that they best work together?
As said by Philippe in his introduction, what we are looking for is for projects that will not happen without EUCAD support, or at least we want EUCAD support to make some kind of difference. So acceleration, larger scale, more interoperability, etc., etc. So for us, it's clearly at the selection phase, because CINEA, where we are acting, is selecting the proposals that best suit a policy, and then in the implementation phase. So basically, it's about these two elements. So selecting during the implementation the project that really needs to select the project that really needs support, and then help them during their lifetime, because projects that really need self-support to be implemented are usually projects which are more difficult to be implemented, need more support. So we are trying to help them, to accompany them during the implementation. And this is maybe the contribution we can give to help this project being successfully implemented.
Okay, thank you. So you talked there about the transition research results into deployment, but from the road administrator's point of view now, Susanna, if I can come to you, it seems to me that more and more is being expected from road infrastructure. It's not just exchange of traffic information, but safety data, but also the whole function that goes around automated driving. So from your point of view, what are the main future challenges and what investments are necessary in the road sector to facilitate the introduction of automated vehicles?
That's a very good question. From our point of view as a road operator, first of all, we need to align the development of an automated traffic system, for example, and this also includes the automated cars or the digital infrastructure, which is maybe needed for it. It's not all that clear today. And and when we have a look at the different life cycles of road infrastructure, or also the technique in the cars, then there is an alignment is really needed, and a better exchange generally of what services are needed for different stakeholders. This is also quite an important question. As I said, for us, it's safety and efficiency. Maybe for a road operator in the beginning, not a road operator, sorry, for an automotive industry, there are also maybe aspects of comfort for the people in the car. As I said before, the operational processes that need to be built up, they need to be defined and established. And this is a really hard job to do, to be honest. And this needs to be done on every level and for every stakeholder. And for a proper operation in the future of CITS, CCAM services, whatever will come, there is a standardization process needed and a harmonization process. This is really the key to bring this technique on the road. And besides that, also legal aspects, IT security and interoperability. This means a lot of testing, for example, is also the key to have a proper operation in the end. And it should be invested also in how to bring the technique on the road. We shouldn't not only say, here is the money, just implement it, because it's really hard to implement new technology when there is if no one has done it before. So I think a pool of knowledge is quite helpful for everyone, because when we talk about standardization, it's clear that it has to be done in the same way in every country, for every OEM, for every road operator, and that's where we can build up synergies, or we can use synergies. And this can guarantee not only a very single usage of new technology, but also a widespread usage of connected services.
Okay, thank you. It's obviously not just about the technology there, that issue of standardization and testing and sharing knowledge and all of those platforms. I mean, some good steps have been made in the CCAM, bringing people together, but it's clear there's a long way to go. So, I mean, thank you for that, from that elaboration from the infrastructure point of view, from the road user's point of view, but from Volvo Group's point of view, it's clear that developing highly automated vehicles well, you are developing highly automated vehicles, and sometimes in very demanding situations, not just, we talk about the simple cases, but in these mixed traffic cases. So in order to use the full potential of automated driving on public roads, what would you ask the infrastructure managers or anybody else to implement next? What would your hope be?
Yeah, maybe let me start with anyone else then. No, but I think I want to come back. When it comes to commercial vehicles, it is actually really about the business model around it. That's what we need to get this going. We need more, but we need that. We can't forget this, because it's not only about the comfort of the driver and when it comes to trucking, it's all about efficiency, and that's business, coming back to that. So, but what we need then from infrastructure, I mean, we need the necessary digital infrastructure, obviously. And again, it's a digital and a green transition, so it's not only the digital infrastructure, but it's also then the charging infrastructure that we're talking about, because we are changing everything in our industry from a technology perspective right now as we speak. It's fuel cells for hydrogen, it's battery electric, it's many different technologies at the same time changing. So and at the same time, in pace, we need to change then the corresponding infrastructure to this, to both to connectivity, to 100% connectivity, platforms that we can really communicate in between all these different parties, as Susanne is talking about. That needs to be standardized, obviously. Also from the power grid, if we come back to the green transition, we need that part of infrastructure as well to be built out on charging and refueling of green hydrogen, which is also not available today. But also then, more tangible topics like safety, road equipment and machine readable signage, for instance, also for the road machines out there, communicating parking systems with charging, and appropriate resting areas to take care of our drivers, for instance. There are lots of infrastructure related things there, and also integration of logistic hubs. And then road maintenance is, Susanne was into this as well. This is also important, because we are always doing that, right, on our roads here and there. And the connectivity connected to that is something that we can really work on to make, to secure that we have the flow that we want in the whole logistic chain. I think Susanne was into it, and also Philippe, on standardization. That is something we really need to work with. I think honestly this is a competitive edge that we can do in Europe, maybe even better than other parts of the world. So if we just get going on that, and to really work in parallel then, both on what needs to be happen on the vehicle sides and on the infrastructure side, so that we not only with standards but actually with binding requirements. When should things happen? Hopefully with a little bit of forecasting, and so that we can see it in a few years away, so that we can adapt, obviously, all of us. But we need to see that, and because technology to demonstration, we all know, it's not enough. We need to really scale up. We need a little bit more. I sometimes use an equation with three parts of it. One is vehicle technology. Obviously, we need that, but that vehicle technology goes with infrastructure, and times the business case, or the total cost of ownership for our customers. And then if we have all those three, the transition can happen quick in business to business, because as soon as our customers see that there is a TCO benefit of going into a new technology, then it happens, because it's all about business. But remember, it's times sign in between those three. So any one of these being zero means that the equation turns zero, right? So we need to work in parallel, obviously. I think I stop there.
It's very interesting that you see that you clearly say that Europe can do this. I mean, a little bit different to the approach that was presented this morning, which is in the United States, less risk averse, and therefore make it happen and learn as you're doing it. You clearly believe in this business of the collaboration and the knowledge sharing will get us to a point where we can think this through and develop it with a greater chance of success and perhaps less risk. I mean, if that's how you see it, yeah. Of course, yes.
No, yeah, I believe in Europe, of course, absolutely. If we can keep all these balls in the air at the same time, you know, so to say, that we can work with vehicle technology, with infrastructure, with the policy, with the standards, all of it at the same time, then I think we can be just as successful as any other part of the world. Volvo Group being global, of course, we do the same thing in US and elsewhere as well. So, but we would love to have Europe in the forefront, especially on the green transition, where we thought Europe absolutely wanted to be in the green front of the world. Now we're starting to doubt it a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I mean, that conversation I thought was very, very rich, and I'm sure there are many questions from the floor. Did anybody want to come in on anything specific that they've heard so far before I pose another question to you, just to know if I don't see that? Because, I mean, if not, let me pose this general question to the panel, and if you wanted to come in, do so, and that would leave us a good 10 minutes for questions at the end. But we're talking a lot about this necessary alignment between Horizon Europe and CEF to try and make these stepping stones between research and innovation, and then pilot, and then demonstration, and then deployment, to allow the CCM technologies. But what kind of synergies would we want between those two programs or with other initiatives? It seems to me that now, in terms of public funding alone, we've got the recovery packages in the various member states, which is 600 billion euro. And we've got regional development funding, 200 and something billion euro. And then we've got the CEF, which I think you mentioned, 25 billion euro under your own direct control. And Horizon Europe is 95 billion euro, of which there are some 20 something in associated technologies to this conference. So that's a huge amount of public funding. Are we efficient in making those stepping stones work? And is our approach to leveraging private funding, which has to be there? It seems to be everybody is clear that the private funding has to be there. Are we sophisticated enough to make that a real success at this moment now? Perhaps I'll hand that to a policy maker first.
Thank you. Not an easy question. Let me start by the end. I mean, there is a lot of money out there indeed. It is never sufficient, on the other hand, we know as well. I think what Nicolas said is very important. There's often a business case about what we are talking about. And this is also why the public funding has to be used where it is really needed. And this is, for instance, also the chicken and egg question when we speak about alternative fuels. Is it going to be first the vehicles, but the vehicles will not be bought if there's no infrastructure? So here we took the decision, we will now invest into infrastructure, and the infrastructure will be there, it will be rolled out. We have the AFIR with the binding requirements, making sure that this is there. And with the public support, we are now targeting very clearly where we want this infrastructure still to happen. But we are very much aware as well this will not continue for ages. I mean, soon enough, the market will take over, the cars will be there, and the deployment will happen without us necessarily having to intervene. At the same time, we are trying to combine investment with funding. So we are doing this blending exercise, in particularly on the alternative fuel infrastructure, because indeed we need to have the private sector with us. We need to get their buy-in as well. And of course, we are speaking about this transformation. Everybody is aware of that, and we hope that this will be indeed an economic case for that transformation as well. Again, so we have to use our money very wisely where the public support is needed, and do that in good cooperation and making sure that what we deploy is also usable. And that's the standardization, of course, all these questions. Of course, today is about the automated driving. I mean, we are still, I mean, there will still be a couple of meters to be done until we get there. We are deploying ITS and CITS today, but we believe again that whatever we are deploying today will help the human drivers as much as it will help in future the automated driver. So in that sense, we are paving the way. Now, in terms of scale, it is very difficult to judge what will be needed to be there to start this transformation at all. But I mean, from the funding side, at least we try our best, and then we use the means we have. And for the rest, we would need then colleagues who are working more on the policy still to come in and provide more light on that.
Christian, did you want to come in?
Simply to add that for us the key question is always to know what kind of difference funding will make. So will it help accelerating a process, putting it in a better direction? So this is why, for example, we are trying to build as much as possible on research project, but we were not able so far to really fund a path like the one you were explaining, simply because the key principle for the selection of SEF project is competition, open competition between projects, and it's very difficult to favor too much project just because they were funded under research. What we see in practice is that in a certain number of occasions, the fact that projects were funded under a research framework horizon then makes them better, more competitive when it comes to deployment, large-scale deployment. So it's something that happens rather naturally, and it's very difficult for us to force it through a call for proposal due to the competitive nature they have. So the key is more, I would say, and it's again the ball more for the policy level to design these work programs, policy priority in a way that the projects that we will select in the end will indeed be those that need funded to be implemented, will best serve policy proposals.
Okay, I see the point. Susanna, did you want to come in from your perspective?
Yes, you said a very interesting sentence. What we deploy should be usable. And I think this is a very important point because if innovation or research will be transferred into real operation, it will probably take us as long as the basic research activities to bring it or to use it in a usable way. Yeah, as I said before, an early alignment is necessary to meet these issues. And it would be nice, especially when the standards are already available, to fund these technologies and maybe to have also a look at all the surroundings, if the if everything is there to run the technology properly. When I think of CITS, I for example, think of the European PKI system. So we are a bit behind, and that's also a reason why it's not fully operational at the moment. And I think this is really a very important point, to have all the technology ready and not only one part in the beginning. Yeah, the key aspects like the legal issues as well should be there in the end as well.
Thank you. Nicholas, did you want to come in on a specific synergy in a couple of minutes if you could, and then it still leaves us 5 minutes for questions at the end?
I'll try, Alan, to keep it short. No, but I think just want to say, I think it's a great initiative to trying to combine the different sources of funding and the different tools that society has in their toolbox. That's great. So really appreciate it. And if we have silos in our different system, be it public or be it private systems, that is what we need to tear down, right? The silos. And this is a great initiative. We do the same. We try to do the same also on the industry side. We even collaborate now and then with our worst competitor, Daimler Trucks in Germany. Of course, under Mrs. Vestager's approval, of course, obviously, but you know, what we are doing is actually that we are moving from what we call a brown platform up to a green platform, right? And we will compete every day of the week with the other OEMs out there on the brown platform as we do today, and we will do that on the green platform as well. But sometimes, maybe in the transition from the brown to the green, maybe we need to secure that we are really being efficient in Europe, all stakeholders out there. So really appreciate it. And also, as Christian was into, I mean, these large demonstration projects is also a great initiative. We strongly believe in it. Hopefully Volvo will be in one or two of them, but let's see. That isn't the matter. I mean, that's not the most important thing. The thing is that Europe is moving ahead, and we need to do it large scale. Otherwise, it won't happen, the change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think that was it. Very interesting information that came out earlier, that the ITS call and the CEF calls are oversubscribed, so it's clearly a very vibrant area, and the audience here has been very busy and is probably listening very intently to this discussion. So it does leave us now 6 or 7 minutes for questions, and I was a little bit concerned about opening up the floor because I had several that I would ask myself. Does anybody have a question that they would like to pose now? I see one hand at the back. Is it a short question? You have a microphone on your desk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, citizens. After a long time, Angelos Harlaftis, Epafos Advisors. We represent, the EcoWaves movement, a pan-European and Mediterranean movement which is based in direct democracy, in science and in ecology. Our homage in all around Europe, they have a small request to your research towards deployment. This, to us, the engineers, it is the design. Taking into consideration the light, semi-automated industry, like the bicycles, the trottinettes, this kind of stuff, because, this is for the safety of the citizens and the security when they use in the future, the younger generations like we are, they are using this kind of stuff, even to long-term distances. Thank you very much.
Okay, I mean, I think that was more of a statement than a question. Is anything that anybody want to come in on that? Because I mean, I think that dilemma of earlier in the day it was said shared mobility is one of the main elements, and that's different to changing people's driving habits. Sorry, ownership habits. The shared mobility, but then you've got also a whole, as the point there was, a generation who are looking to use small shared and even starting to become further distance. So I see the point, although it wasn't the question I was expecting. So did you want to have a comment on that? I mean, keep it short if you can, because there's one more question.
Absolutely, go public transport. We do buses. No, but joke aside, I mean, we didn't mention it too much, honestly. So it's a fair question, and it's about system integration of all different traffic modes and public transport together with bicycles, together with pedestrians, and all of these different things. We still do have a challenge in society to actually succeed with that as well. Different ticket systems and stuff like that shouldn't be too hard to fix.
Okay, thank you. I think I saw two questions, in fact. So there was a question from a gentleman in the middle of the back who has a face I think I recognise, so you smile. And was there a question down here at the front? Yeah, so we'll take those two questions and then we'll see where we are, and we'll see whether in any way I can summarise what's been said in the last hour. So a question from the centre.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Yes, Steve Phillips, Contributor Protective Roads. Again, an interesting session. I'm sure we could talk about this for another 2 hours. I think three main points, questions. I understand, and we all support the need to increase the deployment from research to deployment. I'm just questioning, and this is for the panelists, is a too narrow focus on giving extra points to Horizon Europe projects losing actually the enormous potential of the research that's carried out at a national level? So wouldn't a better model actually to be rewarding recognised research programmes and the outputs rather than just Horizon Europe? Connecting with that, I think there is an element, again, directly, sometimes the Horizon Europe projects, the kind of consortium and the partners may not always be the most appropriate ones to then move into a CEF or other funding project. And the final one, and maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear much discussion about the investment banks. Now, from the infrastructure sector, the investment banks are also very, very important. So how do we get them more engaged, and how do we, on that topic and the acceptance, is the appraisal scheme, the business case, if you like, from the infrastructure side, that we need to change some of the rules of the game to make it easier to invest and get the rewards from that?
I mean, perhaps that last one, would either of you from the vehicle or the infrastructure side like to come in there? In fact, the roles of the banks or the EIB, as I gather that section of the question.
Should I start? Yeah, well, maybe it's from a vehicle OEM perspective. It's I think, I mean, yes, it's very welcome for the investment banks to engage, but I think honestly, for our transition, looking a little bit egoistically at the transition that we are focusing on the green transition and on the digital transition, the funding perspective is more closer to deployment, which would imply that investment banks should be close to it then, I guess. And then it's more connected to infrastructure, more money and more needed, honestly. Charging infrastructure, we need to build it in 6 years' time, for instance, right? So I don't know if that's an answer, but we do work within the European Investment Bank also on research and innovation, of course.
Philippe, you want to come in?
The European Investment Bank, just to flag that we are working quite closely with them together. They have their transport lending policy, which was adopted not so long ago, which is really fully aligned with the policy, the transport policy that we from the Commission are developing. So the greening and digitalization is really high on the agenda, and I think that there should be really a motivation, and we see it also with the national promotional banks with whom we are working on the alternative fuel infrastructure again, that they are looking for projects, but of course it's a different kind of project. It has to be closer to economic viability, etc., because speaking about loans is something different than speaking about grants. The grant part is often still required these days to accelerate the implementation, and we are happy to do so. But of course, in the longer run, and given also the amounts we are speaking about, we have to work together with the banks for sure.
Thank you. If you want to come quickly in, we're going to take one question after this, so we'll perhaps, if you can keep your interventions short, but please come in, Christian.
No, just a very short statement on our selection. Just to be clear, we are not giving extra points to projects that come from Horizon Europe or whatever. What we are looking is at the technical maturity. So this is one aspect which is looked at during the evaluation, and of course, if it has been successful during a research project, being it national research or European one, this will be valued positively, because what the experts are looking at is technical maturity, wherever it comes from.
But at the same time, if I may, probably the Horizon projects have the advantage that they are very often already cross-border projects involving many entities from different member states, which again matches very naturally our objective of having high European added value, which is probably less the case for nationally funded research, which will probably be very national focus.
Yeah, thank you. Susanna, did you particularly want to come in, or should I pose the last question? It's okay. So was there one question here at the front as a last question, if I may?
Thank you, Alan. Margriet van Schijndel, Eindhoven University. Just a quick question. The title of the session includes From Research Towards Deployment. What research can support deployment further, or research and education. Can you comment on that, please?
Sorry, so I didn't quite get the education element there. Of course, education and educating a set of resources, human resources, which will feed the entire industry is a super important topic. I see it as slightly aside. I think what we were addressing here is when you have research results that are coming out of the huge amount of funding that's gone into Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, and as Stephen said a little bit earlier, also all sorts of national programs and other programs. It's getting that across the Valley of Death into deployment that I thought we were focusing on. Maybe that doesn't answer your question.
Partially, I think. I think sometimes we need some research to make it faster to cross that Valley of Death.
Yeah.
That was what I was hoping for.
Okay. So speeding up the process is a little bit the stepping stones that I think we were talking about to try and design the system a little bit more efficiently, so that as things are coming to maturity, then that pool of mature technologies is visible, so that can then be deployed. And I think one of the things mentioned earlier, perhaps at the side of the conversation, was showcasing the technologies that are available and are mature is something that we can certainly do at the right sort of conferences and at the what used to be called the 10T days and now the CEF days and those sorts of things. Did anybody want to comment on that last element before I close the session?
Just to flag one side of the coin is, of course, also, and I know it's very, very tricky, but when doing research, the deployment should already be in the back of the mind as well, because it's very good to come up with the perfect, brilliant solution to something, but if it is not implementable, or if the deployment costs are such that it is nearly impossible to get there, then maybe we have to find another solution. So that's maybe the call a bit from the deployment side towards the research world to also always have this deployment in mind when doing the research.
Would you like to take the last word? Because I think we, 5 minutes over, so if you would, or if it's very short, maybe both the last word, but please, Susanna.
Just very quickly, yes, I can just underline this, because sometimes we're getting a lot of questions what we can do on the motorways, and now we have some very good ideas, and we say, okay, some is interesting, and we can have a look at this together, and then bring in some operational aspects which we really need to regard to bring this into a proper operation. So I think a really good exchange already during research and a glimpse of what or how the system will be operated in the end is really, really important to for the beginning of the research. Yeah.
Nicholas, last word.
No, but exactly. I mean, doing research with deployment as the focus, it can contain much wider circles actually of research, honestly, including regulations also, and it's in the research areas where we actually know or think that we know what the future will be like, right? So we should utilize that and secure that we get society with us and regulations and standards with us, and we can probably do more on that in early phases, so that we don't end up in a situation when part of Europe want to know that we can go electric big time with battery electric trucks, while other parts believe that it will be run on fossil fuel internal combustion engines forever, for instance. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much for all of those comments, and thank you for all for staying with the session, which is just overrun by about 7 minutes. So we're eating into the time which was for the parallel sessions. I would really like to thank the panel very much indeed for their time. So if everybody could show their appreciation.